All right, man, peace. So now, as I'm going through my DVR, I came across an episode from, I think it was last week, maybe a week and a half ago, where they were at the White House. They're interviewing the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. He's going to discuss the situation with North Korea as well as with China. So obviously, as they interview him, I'm going to chime in and touch on a few topics.
We're in the East Room having a remarkable day, a special day for us, getting a chance to see this magnificent building, feel the patriotism, feel the sense of history here, and we're especially glad now to be joined by the Vice President of the United States. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And
Mike Pence, so-called ultra-conservative, so-called religious conservative as well. Please understand that a lot of the people who pose as ultra-conservatives and religious conservatives are also the ones who are doing the most wicked things behind closed doors. All right. Pedophilia, child sex trafficking, human sacrifice. These are the type of things that a lot of these so-called conservative elite do. Bohemian Grove, etc. But most of you guys are familiar with those things. Mike Pence also lives in the neighborhood of renown that you brothers keep asking me about, the area of Washington, D.C., that is the subject of the story of concerning Pizzagate. All right, the so-called Ping Pong Comet Pizza Gallery Pizzeria owned by James Delafontis. Yeah, Mike Pence lives right in that neighborhood. All right, that neighborhood is filled with CIA operatives as well. All right, allegedly. But yeah, Mike Pence is a part of that whole thing. I'll probably do a video on Pizzagate soon enough. But all of the elite congressmen and notable figures are involved with the pedophile ring, which is involved with the veneration of Pan. All right. I constantly touch on the same topics and the same names, the same issues, because they're all connected, brothers. All right. Now, allegedly, when they have their child sex parties in the White House, when Obama orders the children, the terminology that he uses is pizza and hot dogs, because the pizza stands for the little girls and the hot dog is the code word for the little boys. All right. Allegedly.
welcome to the White House.
Let me begin with North Korea. You were there. Tell me the impact of being there and where you think this conflict is right now, because the president talked to John Dickerson and characterized the North Korean leader.
Well, it's a very serious time in the region, and it's a very serious threat to the peace and stability of our allies. And I think
when he says the peace and stability of the United States allies, he's talking about South Korea and Japan, right? What he means by allies is those are the subsidiaries of America. All right. South Korea and Japan are owned by America, quiet as kept. OK, as well as Taiwan. They're owned by America as far as the American corporation. All right. America is still owned by Britain. OK, so you don't just drop 2 nukes on a country and then give them back their liberty. Right. That just doesn't happen. So America still runs Japan, but they're kind of hands off with them. Same thing with South Korea. All right. And they were also involved with on a higher up level. They were involved with the creation of North Korea. America was, at the highest levels. They want the communist powers because it creates an enemy for them to, to put forth or bring forth to the American public to justify the perpetuation of the American war machine. All right. Remember, if there's complete peace, then they can't justify taxes and economic reforms and oppressions that, systematically take away the so-called rights of American citizens, which have already been taken away by the 14th Amendment anyway. All right. But they have to drain you dry. But all these guys are socialists when you get up at the highest level. When I say all, I mean like into the 90th percentile. 80% of these guys, 90% of these guys are socialists. All right. Why is that? Because they're the pawns of the international bankers. Those are their sponsors. All right. Like Trump. Trump is a Zionist. That's why he's with Steve Bannon. All right. That's how they get down. But North Korea was set up by America. They were created by America and Britain. But I'll touch on that a little later.
As the president has said again and again, North Korea represents the most serious security threat in the world. And he wanted me to go there. He wanted me to reaffirm our commitment to South Korea, to Japan, to our allies in the region. But to
See, notice he mentioned South Korea and Japan. He said they're allies in the region. All right. The Caucasian elite, they don't look at people of the other races as their allies. They're their subsidiaries. They're their business partners, right? They're part of the business conglomerate. Okay? That's how they view them. That's the term that they use as allies. Now, North Korea and what's known as Red China, those institutions were actually set up by America, right? China became communist due to a institution known as if I remember correctly, the IPR, right? The Institute of Pacific Relations. They were the ones who were involved with a lot of the propaganda, the literary propaganda, and the IPR was funded by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, Standard Oil, etc. All right, Ford Motor Company, if I remember correctly. Right. That was the institute that put forth a lot of the literature to promote socialism in the Pacific region. All right. Now, before China became a communist power, they were governed by a man named Sun Yat-Sen. Now, Sun Yat-Sen, this was around the 1920s, early 1920s. I can't remember which exact year, 22 or 23. He was friends with Lenin, right? Who was the leader in Russia under the Bolsheviks at that time. And Lenin was trying to influence Sun Yat-sen into becoming a communist to make China communist. Sun Yat-sen was very interested in becoming a communist after he heard what Lenin had to say about communism. Sun Yat-sen went on to read a book written by a man who was a former communist, former socialist, and he got turned off to communism. He decided to go towards a republic, similar to what America had initially alleged itself to be back in the late 1700s. And he was succeeded by a man named Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek converted to Christianity. Right? Chiang Kai-shek wanted China to remain a republic. So eventually, you had the burgeoning communist movement, communist revolution under Mao Zedong and another man named Chu Enlai, if I remember correctly, or Chow Enlai. And they were being bankrolled by the international bankers. They were being subsidized by the Russians. All right. So when World War II broke out, Japan invaded China. And when this is around 1937, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor in 1941, China under Chiang Kai-shek figured that he had an ally in America, right? China wanted to team up with America because they were fighting wars on two fronts. They were fighting against the communists within the country, and they were also fighting against the Japanese, right? They wanted help from from America, hopefully, to help them wage the war against the communists. And in return, China would help America against Japan. America didn't want China's help. You know why? Because they wanted China to become communist. All right. Like I said before, this was under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was a so-called socialist. All right. He was a pawn of the bankers, allegedly. All right. Allegedly. All right. But he was a pawn of the international bankers. He's the one who allowed Pearl Harbor to get bombed because he wanted America in the war. They also wanted they also wanted China to become communist. They did not want to help Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek asked America for hundreds of millions of dollars in gold to help the country because the war had made them have to print paper money with none backing it. It plunged them into inflation. Like I said, once again, when the bankers want to change over the regime, they try to get you to institute inflation through two ways, either through wars or through causing insolvency in your banks. All right. They couldn't control the Chinese banks, so they caused wars. Remember, they wanted Chiang Kai-shek out. They wanted Mao Zedong in. All right. So eventually that's what happened. Mao Zedong was able to take over because Chiang Kai-shek, he was getting attacked by both sides. The economy plunged into inflation. The money that America promised to the Chinese under Chiang Kai-shek, it never came through. Right? He asked them for $250 million in gold, somewhere around there. They never delivered. Why? Because the guy, the American diplomat who was supposed to help him, I believe his name was Harry White. He was also a communist and a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. All right. This is why back in the 50s, you had guys like Joseph McCarthy trying to chase down all the communists in Congress and in amongst the higher levels of America, because it was real. All right. That stuff was real. And I'll probably touch on guys like Joseph McCarthy and Jim Forrestal later. But yeah, they wanted Chiang Kai-shek out. They wanted Mao Zedong in. Now, later on during the Korean War, bringing us to Korea, when the North Koreans, well, first off, at the end of World War II, they basically gave, Britain and America agreed to give Russia North Korea. That's why I said before, all this stuff is staged, guys. Most of this stuff is staged. They wanted communism in that region of the world. They wanted it because they really want America to be communist, quiet as kept. All right? Because that's the easiest way for the bankers to make money. You know, allegedly. Look, everything I'm saying is alleged, all right? But that's what they want. So when the Korean War broke out, by this time, Chiang Kai-shek is only in control of Taiwan because he got kicked out of China. He's running Taiwan. So he figures, you know what? This is my opportunity. This is my opportunity to take back China. Because when the Korean War broke out, Red China agreed to help North Korea fight against America. So Chiang Kai-shek figures we can invade China and make them fight on two fronts like they made me fight on two fronts, and I could take back China. But you know what America did under Harry Truman? That pawn, the guy who dropped the nukes on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and Harry Truman, he's a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. He came out and said that the nuclear bomb was the greatest thing ever in history. That's how much of a sadistic that guy was. But anyway, back to the issue at hand. When Chiang Kai-shek tried to invade invade China to take back China, Harry S. Truman set up a blockade between Taiwan and China so that he couldn't invade. That shows you that he did not want them to invade. All right. Beyond that, George MacArthur, the general of renown in the Pacific, the guy who was in charge of the troops in Japan during World War, what's that little island off the coast of Japan? It's slipping my mind now. But he was in charge of the Marines there. He was also in charge of the troops in the Korean War. And he's on record as saying that everything that they tried to do against North Korea, they already knew what was happening. All right? They already knew. And the Red Chinese came to supplement the North Korean forces. They crossed over the Yalu River to help them out. And MacArthur said that he wanted to bomb the bridges of the Yalu River to stop the reinforcements. And Harry S. Truman shut them down. So that goes to show you they wanted the communist North Korea to win. They wanted that. And then MacArthur was taken out of command. And he came out and said that this is the only war ever fought where they had no objective. They never actually declared war. So that was his way of saying that they wanted the communists to win. All right. And they also wanted, the tungsten mines. That's really the only reason why America even fought back, was because they wanted the tungsten mines for the space program. All right. But that's all it was about. They're on record as saying the North Koreans and the Red Chinese are on record as saying they already knew every move that America was going to make. You know why? Because after the UN was formed, United Nations was formed, for the president to declare any type of war action, he didn't have the final say. The person that had the final say in the UN is somebody who goes under the title of the Undersecretary of Political, if I remember correctly, it's a long acronym. It's the Undersecretary of Political and Financial Affairs, if I remember correctly. And that person is appointed by the UN. And you know who they appointed during that time period? A Soviet, pardon me, named Konstantin Zimichenko or Zirichenko. If my memory, is not correct, y'all could look it up. All right. He was the one who was receiving all of the plans of the American military, and he was forwarding it over to the Soviets, who were forwarding it over to the North Koreans. All right. The North Koreans on record is saying they knew everything that America was going to do before they did it. That's why they lost the war. All right. So that whole thing was fixed. So North Korea is a creation of the communist aspects of America and of the UN. The whole thing was just a bunch of nonsense. And America to this day, the Russians and the North Koreans, they get most of their technology from America. All right.
To stand there, as I had the privilege to do at the DMZ, and to look into North Korea for...
When he says the DMZ, he's talking about the 38th parallel. All right. That's the dividing line between North and South Korea. Just north of that is where the tungsten mines are. You need the tungsten to build space shuttles.
For me, it was a chilling experience to look into a nation living under the kind of oppressive regime that the Kim family means in Pyongyang.
Everybody knows that the best way to get something done here is through China, with China. The president constantly talks about this relationship he has with Xi Jinping. Mm-hmm. What are the Chinese doing specifically that's making the chances of eliminating this problem?
Well, look, and the president's made it clear. We seek a peaceable solution here, but the key is that the message he had me make clear, he had the Secretary of State made clear, and he's made clear, is that the era of strategic patience is over. That now, for more than a quarter of a century, the United States has kind of, in one way or another, negotiated, had talks, waited patiently. All the while, we've seen the regime in North Korea continue its headlong pursuit of nuclear weapons.
Yeah, most likely with technology that you guys gave them, allegedly. All right. The only reason why they talking this stuff now is because they want access to the natural resources. North Korea has like $10 trillion in natural resources there. Right. They're very rich in spice mines and in tungsten and things of that nature.
And a ballistic missile program. The president said that's over. We're engaging our allies in the region to economically and diplomatically isolate North Korea. But what's really new here, I think it's a great encouragement to people across this country and across the world, is that you have a president in President Trump who's engaging directly with the president of China. And we are seeing China do more than they have done before.
And what is that?
Well, we have word of China turning back coal shipments from North Korea. We have word of them beginning to reduce the amount of commercial travel that exists between North Korea. But as the Secretary of State said at the UN last week, China needs to do more. We're calling on our...
See, they get on TV and they try to act like they're in charge of China. Right? If China's helping out America, it's because America agreed to give China something. Right? China does not follow America's orders, but the Caucasians that run America have to get on television and act like they're giving China orders, for their own self-image. They have to continue on with the false promotion that they have the ability to tell China what to do.
Our allies in the region to reconsider their diplomatic relations with North Korea. We're calling on allies in the region to reconsider their guest worker program that provides an enormous amount of currency to the regime. The key here is for the United States and our allies in the region working with China to provide the kind of economic and diplomatic pressure that will result in the regime in Pyongyang ending permanently their nuclear and ballistic missile ambition. Now, we also made it clear all options are on the table, and in actions the world has seen the president take in Syria and Afghanistan, President Trump in a very real way has restored the credibility of American power, and they know that
He said he's restored the credibility of American power. How did he do that? Give me a break.
Know that we are prepared to defend our allies and defend ourselves, but we're going to drive toward a peaceable solution.
We've made it clear, Mr. Vice President. Do you have a sense of what they want in return from us?
Oh, Gail actually asked a good question. All right. In other words, Gail is not falling for the okie doke that this guy's trying to push. That like the white man wants you to think he just put his Mac down on the Southeast Asian countries and they just gonna fall in line. No, they're about their business. For them to do anything, you had to offer them something. So stop bullshitting.
Yes.
Well, I don't think we do at this point. We continue to see one provocation after another. This weekend began with another failed missile launch from North Korea, even while the world community was discussing the issue at the UN Security Council.
So how do we get...
If they're having failed missile launches, it's because you guys are not giving them good enough technology. Because they get all their technology from you.
How do we get at that to find out what do you want in return? What is the whole purpose here?
Well, I honestly, I think North Korea knows what the world community wants. The world community has been united for...
No, I want to know what they want. I'm curious about what they want.
Well,
they want an end to sanctions.
I think this is a terrific question, because one of the things Secretary of State Tillerson has made clear is that under President Donald Trump, we are not going to negotiate to get the right to negotiate. We're not going to negotiate to get at the negotiation table.
Rex Tillerson is an oil man. Anywhere he goes to negotiate for oil reserves, natural resource reserves, for money. That's all it is. It's a big corporation, big business.
North Korea knows, as through UN actions in the past, through pronouncements by the world community, they need to abandon their nuclear program, abandon their ballistic missile program. They need to stand down in a very real sense to have the right to engage the world community on the way forward.
Mr. Vice President, can I ask you, because Congress finally reached agreement on this spending agreement last night, so there won't be a government shutdown, but it does not include money for the wall, and it does continue funding for Planned Parenthood. Are you disappointed?
We couldn't be more pleased that, thanks to President Trump's leadership and direct engagement, last night the White House and leaders in the House and Senate in both parties signed off on a budget deal. It'll avert a government shutdown, but more important than that, there's going to be a significant increase in military spending.
Yeah, because America's a war machine. But notice the Caucasian woman mentioned Planned Parenthood. They're not going to get rid of Planned Parenthood because America is galvanized off the sacrifice of children. All right. What the abortion issue is really about is the sacrifice of children's blood, of babies' blood, to Baal, right, or Molech, or whatever you want to call him. Right. Bible knows him as Nimrod. That's what it's about. Child sacrifice is big. Spiritual energy, the life of the life of the person is in the blood. Right? They need that blood sacrifice, especially of a baby. Right? The more babies that get killed, the more energy that goes into the continuance of this society, of this kingdom. Right? Not just America. America is just an offshoot of the Vatican. All right, but I'm going to touch on that later.
Our armed forces have been hollowed out in recent years by budget cuts, $21 billion in defense spending in this bill. There's also a down payment on border security. I think the American people are encouraged to hear that since our inauguration, illegal border crossings are down 60+% in this country. And in this bill, there's a down payment on additional border security. I'm also pleased to see, as the president was insistent on, that we're providing support for health benefits for coal miners. And right here in the District of Columbia, we're continuing an educational choice program for disadvantaged children that began back in the days that I was in the Congress. So,
an educational choice program for disadvantaged children. what the hell does that even mean? Damn well these children don't have a choice in regards to what they're being taught. All right, and for those of you who don't know, the educational system is based on something called if I remember correctly, the Saturnian educational system, based off of Saturn. All right, John Dewey, one of the major educational reformers in American history. John Dewey, I believe he's where you get the term the Dewey Decimal System from. John Dewey, he was an atheist. All right, so that's why in America today, and a socialist, that's why you get a lot of that, that a lot of the curriculums of the school system. They're trying to divorce the school teachings from any mention of God or any type of spiritual aspect. All right. They want you completely dependent on the state and your own vain opinion, which is determined and predicated by what they, send through the television.
This is a budget deal that's a bipartisan win for the American people, and the president signed off on the parameters early yesterday. Republicans and Democrats reached an agreement with the White House last night, and I think that's a good piece of...
There was compromise.
A good piece of shit.
Monday morning
there was
news for the American people.
There was compromise, compromising.
The president told John Dickerson over the weekend that it's been a learning curve for the Republican Party, and he said for himself as well. Do you feel that?
Well, for me, it's been just an incredibly humbling experience to be able to come to this building every day to serve as vice president to President Donald Trump.
What does that have to do with what she asked you? What's wrong with this man's face? It meant like he got to go to the bathroom.
But I think for our colleagues on Capitol Hill particularly, as we continue to drive toward keeping our promise to repeal and replace Obamacare, as we lay a foundation for an infrastructure bill, for President Trump's call for the largest tax cut in American history, I think the learning process for many on Capitol Hill about governing has been moving forward, and I think this morning's announcement about reaching a bipartisan deal on budget says that the American people can be encouraged that Washington is working again, thanks to the strong leadership of President Donald Trump, thanks to his direct engagement with members of Congress.
Right, but when y'all gonna get rid of the Federal Reserve? That's my question.
We're seeing real
I hear
progress.
you have Wednesday night dinners for people.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We are out of time, but thank you so much.
I would like to come to Wednesday night dinner.
Thank you so much for joining us. We also want...
What the hell does Gail be talking about, man? Like, they ask real questions, Gail, like, oh, wow, where'd you buy that blazer?
Want to thank everyone at the White House, including the communications team, the ushers, security, and all of the staff who have been so gracious. Their help's been crucial, of course, in bringing you this very special broadcast from inside the East Room. A special thanks to the entire CBS News crew and DC Bureau.
That does it for us.
Right, but anyway, I just want to touch on those things. It's very important. All that nonsense about North Korea and China and all those countries where they had communism installed on purpose over there. All right. And they did not want those countries to not be communist. They did that on purpose. They've helped Russia along the way. They've been helping Russia for the last 100 years since Russia became a communist country. Right. And the central banks have been running Russia. Or pardon me, the international bankers. They've been running Russia. Russia is very essential for the oil reserves, but Russia is the one that they've used as a focal point to push communism amongst Southeast Asian countries. All right. Jim Forrestal, for those of you who don't know, Jim Forrestal was the first Secretary of Defense. He's on record as saying that, and this was back in the late 40s. He's on record as saying that the Korean War and the war in Vietnam were planned 20, 30 years in advance. This is before he allegedly committed suicide, but I'll probably touch on that later. All right. Peace.